Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
What did I?
So I don't know if we have any baseball fans here today. Anybody a baseball? You're a baseball fan? We'll talk later. But we're coming into the home stretch on this summer exploration of the power of words. We're not quite at home plate yet. Because I was pondering this week, I thought, is there anything about the power of words that's left to say that we haven't covered already? And I got a quick, short answer, and it was yes. The power of words left unsaid, which would not have occurred to me. And just like every aspect of the power of words spoken, the aspects of the words not spoken is as multifaceted. And I'm sure I'm not going to cover all the facets today. You're welcome. The Judeo-Christian scriptures are full of references and advices and admonishments and insights about the words we speak and the words we don't speak. The Hebrew book of Proverbs in chapter 10 says, "The wise lay up knowledge, but the mouth of a fool brings ruin near." When words are many, transgression is not lacking, but the prudent are restrained in speech. I think I'm on the guilty side of the mouth of the fool. In the Gospels, there are numerous passages about Jesus even refusing to answer a question. And most striking to me is his silence in the face of questions asked by King Herod that were a matter of his life and death. It's so glaring that even Herod asked him, "Why are you silent? Don't you know I have your life in my hands?" But still he says nothing. There are also quite a number of times that Jesus will deflect a question with another question rather than giving back a direct response. In actuality, when you read, Jesus asks a lot of questions. Other times he encourages the person he's talking to find their own answer within themselves rather than getting the answer directly from him. One of my most favorite accounts of words left unsaid is in the Gospel of John, chapter 8. And in this story, Jesus is asked by a rather devious group of Jewish leaders to condemn an adulterous woman to death by stoning. And I tried to imagine how very cruel that what they were asking must be. After all, they have the law of Moses on their side, but they've intentionally put Jesus in a catch-22. If he stays true to the law of Moses on one side, the woman will die. But on the other hand, if she were to be spared, then Jesus would be guilty of violating Jewish law. So they're hoping to entrap him regardless of how he answers. But curiously enough, instead of responding to the leaders, Jesus bends down and he starts drawing in the dirt. These men continue to badger him until finally, after a bit, he stands up and says to them, "Let the one among you who has not yet sinned throw the first stone." So I've always been intrigued at how that little, seemingly insignificant detail of him drawing in the sand before he answers while he's in front of these religious authorities. Maybe he's doing it to spite them. But that little bit of that story has been retained in every translation that I know of. So it's important to the story. What was Jesus thinking? In the silence of his doodling, was he trying to decide, oh, what can I say so that I can diffuse this whole situation? Or maybe he was buying some time to come up with the right words. Or it could be that he did it so he would have time to listen to his own inner teacher, to know and be guided as to what to say. He might have been giving the authorities a chance to, quote Taylor Swift, calm down. Calm down. Or it could have been that he wanted them to see the harm in what they were doing. He wanted them to see the humanity in the woman that they were condemning. What words did Jesus not say in that pause that he gave himself? Clearly, whatever the reason for him doodling in the dirt, the answer he gives serves its purpose. And eventually, the men just kind of wander off one by one. We've seen way too often in recent years how spoken words can do a lot of damage when they're used in anger or judgment or blaming, or when they're used to reply in an echo back with blaming and judgment and anger. The Hebrew book of Proverbs in chapter 15 reminds us that a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. It goes on to say, I love this, the tongue of the wise adorns knowledge, not exaggerates it or distorts it, but the mouths of fools pour out folly. So the front side of the words left unsaid coin includes words that are hurtful and those that agitate and separate, those that isolate and alienate. These words do more harm than good and are better left unsaid. We can turn again to Proverbs, this time in chapter 29. A fool gives complete vent to anger, but the wise quietly holds it back. And maybe the wise examines why the anger. Holding back anger can be as simple as the old technique of take a breath and count to 10. You remember that? You've probably done it. That is kind of like doodling in the dirt. And maybe doodle in the dirt, take a breath, and count to 10 is a better formula. But as we pause before we respond, just in that half a heartbeat, we may decide to step completely away from a situation for the time being. We may ask for a longer time to decide how to respond. It can be as simple as saying, how about I get back to you on that? Or we can name what we're feeling without expressing it and then ask for clarification for whatever the other person said that triggered us. It'd be something really simple like, I feel really strongly about what you just said. We're not blaring at them. We're just saying, I feel really strongly. Could you help me understand your point of view? Any of these approaches will keep us in the conversation with another person while also helping us express ourselves calmly and clearly. But of course, there's a flip side to the coin of words left unsaid. If we end up stuffing down those unexpressed words and unexpressed emotions, they're likely to continue ricocheting around in our hearts and in our bodies long after the situation has passed. I consider it that the situation may have passed, but the conversation isn't over as long as it's bouncing around inside of us and those feelings remain unexpressed. And as we've looked at probably too many times, but there's scientific proof, and the research has shown time and time again that there are significant physiological and psychological effects that arise from tamping down our feelings and not speaking our truth. Strong words and powerful emotions are too detrimental to let them remain unexpressed. And at the very least, I think we owe it to ourselves, to our bodies and our souls, to give them some kind of outlet. And that, to me, is what Quakers have done really well. Quakers have a rich heritage that offers a variety of ideas for letting out our unsaid words. The practice of speaking truth to power, even though you may shake, likely that arises out of a need to give our words a voice, even to the point that it leads us to breaking an unjust law. John Woolman, a well-known 18th century Quaker, practiced a wide number of outlets of expression. First off, he remained silent while following his guidance as to what to do next. He spoke and wrote prolifically about a multitude of difficult topics. John Woolman was even a vegetarian. He had an opinion on a lot of things, and he wrote and spoke about that as well as many other topics. Woolman actively sought out those individuals who disagreed with him, and he wouldn't confront them, but he would share what he believed, even if it meant traveling across the country or traveling across the Atlantic Ocean, even if it meant it would lead to his own death, which it did. He died of smallpox, going to England to share his insights. For a man who only lived 52 years, John Woolman found countless means to expressing the words on his heart in productive ways. Other friends have used the creativity of poetry, music, art. They found that is a way for them to express their deep emotions and their unspoken words. And there have always, in the history of Quakers, been peaceful protests and letter writing campaigns, face-to-face visits with victims and perpetrators of violence, with elected officials and influential authorities. I've heard, but I cannot prove, that Quakers have founded more international and national nonprofits than any other group, religious or not, to address the needs of the voiceless. I've heard it's like 90% of the world's most influential nonprofits were founded by Quakers and then handed off to, like Save the Children was founded by a Quaker, but I can't prove it. When it comes to expressing unsaid words, Quakers really set the bar pretty high. But I don't know about you, that kind of overwhelms me. That kind of grand accomplishment, even John Woolman, that overwhelms me. I have to consider options that are closer to my ground of being. Not all of us can achieve global or national or even regional success like the icons that the Weighty Friends are. Perhaps the most poignant and accessible outlet for unspoken words is when we speak from the heart. We can begin speaking from the heart through an honest and private reflection in our personal journals. Don't have to talk to anybody but this 39-cent counselor. We can have a conversation with a neutral person like a counselor or a coach or a spiritual director, somebody who's trained to listen and shed new light and give us new options and new perspectives while we are giving voice to those unsaid words in safe space. Giving voice to our unsaid words by addressing an issue face to face and heart to heart, to me, that's probably the most vulnerable choice out of all of that we can make. It's a deeply personal and really scary way of speaking truth to power, because we have given our power over to someone else rather than keep ourselves empowered for honest self-expression. So speaking heart to heart and speaking face to face is us taking our power back. I have a feeling and I have a belief that sharing tenderly and honestly from the truth of our hearts may well be the most significant step that anyone can take toward peace. Whether it's inner peace and I just have to get this off my chest, or outer peace, let's settle this itchy thing between us. It may be even world peace. Begins with a heart-to-heart conversation. I love the words from the Hebrew book of Job, the messenger version of Job 33, where Job's friend's son Elihu begins to speak his unspoken words about Job's undeserved suffering. He pleads with him, saying, "Please, Job, hear me out. Honor me by listening to me. What I'm about to say has been carefully thought out. I have no ulterior motives in this, and I am speaking honestly from my heart." A wise young man. I'd like to leave you today with a query to ponder as your week gets started. What would your life look like? What would your relationships look like? What would your spirit look like if you were to begin to find authentic ways to express your unspoken words with careful thought, no ulterior motives, and honestly from your heart? And so it is. Amen.